my screen and this nice presentation. I hope you're seeing the right screen. Seeing the presentation?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
But maybe you can maximize the presentation.
Oh,
Oops,
you're seeing
nice,
also the
nice.
notes?
We are, Andrei, if you click those three dots
Yeah.
on the screen and switch to presenter view, I think.
Yeah, let me go back. Okay.
There you go.
Good. Okay, so I wanted to a little bit start with, okay, what is actually UiPath Maestro? Because this, name is covering multiple things across the UiPath ecosystem. So I wanted first of all to explain a little bit what Maestro is before jumping into the demo, because things will make a lot of sense. So first of all, Maestro is about orchestrating AI agents, robots, and people. But basically, it's kind of like an evolution of what we have been building on as what we call long-running workflows. But its evolution is in a way that it surpasses the way that things have been working in long-running workflows, meaning that we have additional resilience, additional scalability. It's much more resource efficient, and at the same time, it's also it has some observability that wasn't possible. Like for example, what you see here in the screen, the fact that you can see how something is operating, and this is like a production view, is something that wasn't possible. So anything that was long running before, like actually observing how things worked was more of a left for the customers to solve. So now we're coming with Maestro, which includes a new developer canvas, new ways to like implement these orchestrations, a new way to monitor, to operate them in production, an experience to monitor them, and even an optimized one. We'll get time to go through each one of them. For today's session, I will focus mostly on doing implementation. So we're going to focus on modeling and implementation. And if it's basically, as I was saying, these are the main things. I want to focus on model and implement, basically design an end-to-end agentic process, and where we're going to be using the industry standards of BPMN constructs. And I would wish if you could tell me, so if Christina, if you can create a quick Q&A on this, if people are familiar with BPMN, because this would help me a lot to know how much I focus on explaining BPMN and the concept versus just passing through them. So we can okay. In the meantime, well, basically it's the modeling part is you are able to model in the canvas. You can even use autopilot to create and edit the canvas that you've seen. Then on the same canvas that you've modeled, so nothing was implemented, then you can actually add implementation details. And implementation details wouldn't mean that you change fundamentally that canvas. You just add the specific implementation on each one. It could be anything. It could be agents, it could be RPA, it could be human in the loop, APIs, anything that it would actually make sense for that part of the process as to be implemented. As another option for that is also around business decisions and rules, which we have support for DMN. And then, as I was mentioning, operate and monitor, like get the possibility to operate in production and have the retriability of failed instances at where they failed, and also the possibility to migrate them in flight. So when they are while they're running, they can be migrated to newer version if that's the case, or even be rolled back if you need as an escape hatch. And yeah, besides that, we're gonna hopefully have some time for monitor and optimize. So that being said, enough with the PowerPoint. I'll try to stick to demos from this moment on. If you can do the quick Q&A now, Christina. If not, we can
Yes, just a bit.
Sorry for putting you on the spot. Good. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the new canvases from Studio Web, because I know the traditional developer in the UiPath world uses normally Studio Desktop, but we wanted to bring this in Studio Web, and then later it will be it will come later into Studio Desktop. But basically, we wanted to allow a canvas that can be people can collaborate, both developers and also like business-oriented people, like business analysts and so on. So I have here I have a pre-built model, which is just a modeling, like nothing is implemented here. But in case you would want to, like, to get started, it's pretty simple. Here under Create New, you'd find the agentic process. This is what you'd search for, and that is what you'll create. And what I have here is basically just the model. So it doesn't have any implementation details. This could have been just modeled by somebody who knows BPMN. And these are some good numbers in terms of people knowing. So we have good answers. Let's see what is the actual result. Good. We're gonna wait for it a bit more. Okay, so in the meantime, I can talk a little bit about the could we see the results?
Yes, just a bit. Okay. Does it work? Can you see them?
Not sure. I think I should stop sharing.
Just a bit if you can. Yes, please.
Yeah, just a sec. No clue.
Okay.
We can see the results.
You can see them? No, I don't think yet. Maybe now.
Oh, cool.
I think we did it not as a true false, but we'll
fine.
have to.
Yeah, I can launch it again just to see.
I think it's a fair. We should probably mention a little bit about BPMN and not have. I see a lot of no's and just some familiarity. I think it's fine. Good. So let's go back to this. So I think it's what's important is for the purposes of this demo is to create, first of all, a separation between what is exactly the BPMN here. So BPMN, first of all, is a modeling notation. It's meant to be able to convey how a process is described. You can describe it and how it runs, but it was never meant to necessarily be also implemented, so it doesn't have that fundamentals there. And each like vendor that builds on top of BPMN have their own interpretation of how that should run. So in our use cases, the idea is that you can use all the BPMN concepts to model, but when you implement, you'll have a subset of concepts that we have an implementation for. So I want to make this distinction between what you can model here versus what you can implement. And you'll see very quickly that even if you have just a model here, no implementation, we could do some nice things like we can do a quick simulation. So when we're doing this simulation is I could basically just it would just show me how it works. I was like, okay, that's nice. I can, let's say if I restart it, I can say, okay, go this way. Okay, then it says, okay, I should run more. Let's see which path I want to go. So I can even simulate it without any implementation detail. This is mostly just to explain, okay, how it works. But BPMN basically has a couple of like important concepts as things that are like these rounded things are called events. They're split between start events, intermediate events, and end events. Then you have what are called tasks. Yeah, which you have multiple task types, which we'll dive in when we get to implementation part. But each task type kind of conveys a meaning. Some of like you have for some of them you have user task like this one um, the person icon. Then some of them are message, like send task. This is one is like considered the send task, and it has an envelope. But again, this is like not necessarily sending an email. It's mostly about sending a message. So this is the BPMN concept, on top of which we add what is the way that you're communicating that message. It could be via an API integration or others. But I wanted to make this distinction between what is modelable is much more than what can be implemented. And this should help a little bit with the initial, segregation. Good. Now that being said, on gateways, again, this is mostly for control flow, but you can see we have exclusive gateways. So this is an exclusive gateway. What it means that it will only go one or the other. So it's kind of like a if condition. Then we have the parallel gateway, which basically means that if I draw something with a parallel gateway, all arrows that will go that are out, it will paralyze them. So it will just go this way and this way. And actually, I can probably show you these examples like this. So this is just a way to kind of like explain it. And yeah, oops, I did the refresh instead of stopping. Yeah, so this is one example. Then the other one is an inclusive gateway. So an inclusive gateway is meant to have for each outgoing path, you can add conditions, and it all that are true will go. So it can behave as a kind of like or type of implementation. So this can be true and this can be true, or only this one can be true, or only this one can be true. So you can use it as a like a nice conditional way. And then the another one which you also have here is in the one in the implementation. This is it's called event-based gateway. And this is basically just a nice way to say, hey, instead of me building a condition, I'm just going to wait for either this event or this event. And we're going to get a little bit on the types of events and how they behave. But the idea is that instead of a condition, it will wait for which event triggers first. Yeah, so I would say we go a little bit through the process, how we want to, what would this implementation be? We have some nice annotations here which kind of explain what we will be implementing here on each step. So for example, this one, we're going to use a data service trigger. So each time an AP invoice entity item is created, we're going to trigger this process. Then here we're going to launch an RPA like job. And we're going to talk a little bit of like other options that we would have for this besides just an RPA job. Then here we're going to build the control flow to either route on one direction or the other. Here we will have an approved invoice. It could be like an actual another like human in the loop task in Action Center. It could be or just an integration service like call where somebody is notified that I have to approve it and then we wait for it. This one doesn't have any implementation. So even if we don't have something implemented, we can still keep it in the canvas. We don't have to delete things from the canvas in order to have something deployed in production. The way that these non-implemented things will behave are just, it's like a no-op. It will just pass through, it will have zero execution time, and it will do basically nothing. Then if we are to move on this path right now is we have the, if a manual resolution is required, so if whatever happened here on the invoice to PO matching couldn't be done automatically by the RPA, then we try to, we're implementing this agent with to resolve the discrepancies. So yeah, this is just basically showing how we can orchestrate an agent. This would be a agent built with Agent Builder. We're not going to jump into the actual implementation of each of the steps because this is just going to take a little bit too much. But the way that I've done the content for this demo is that most of them are like very quick executing, so we don't have to wait a lot on when we're doing the implementation. Then, depending on what the agent does, decides if it's resolved, should it be resolved or should it be rejected. If it's rejected, we notify the vendor. We're going to use here an integration service connector. This is mostly the way that we were going to use anything that is like communicating externally. And then here we're going to wait for a response. And we're going to wait for 1 day on this intermediate event. So this would be a timer event. So it would be very similar to the delay RP activity for those who are familiar with it. And here it would wait for an email to be received. And this would be, again, an IS trigger. Event trigger, basically, we will wait for that email to be received. And then it will go to this resolve discrepancies. It's a human in the loop task. It's also used in case the agent execution fails for whatever. It's basically a way to make sure that even when things don't work as they expected, this event, which is an intermediate event, but the moment that you put it on the boundary of a task, it behaves in a very nice way, meaning that it will react to how this task is executing. So in this case, it's kind of like a try catch. So if this isn't able to execute successfully, then this error event will catch that error and then route this direction. So you have a way to do these types of form catches. But there's other things you can do on a boundary event, like other intermediate events. And we can, if we have some time, we can highlight a couple of use cases. Good. So I guess we should just start implementing it. Okay. Good. So hopefully I'm not going to do many errors along the way, but we're going to try to implement each step and then yeah, test it out. So we start, as I said, each time when you get onto an event, you'll have this action. So this action basically is under the implementation tab. The fact that you have none, it means that even if it has a BPMN notation, it's still not going to be executed as one. The moment we say, okay, we're going to use the wait for connector event implementation, that's when it starts becoming executable. So in this case, I'm going to use the data service connector. Here we're going to leverage the same capabilities of like creating a connection, sharing connections, using pre-built connections here. So this should be what you'd expect. And then here we're going to do a record created. But for the sake of the demo, I'm just going to do a record updated because it's much easier to update records than to create them. Then here I can configure, okay, which data service entity I'm using. I'm going to use the AP invoice. And what's going to do, it's going to load everything here, and even the output. I can add a filter in case I want to like filter on only certain like attributes are being changed or updated in this case. So not all like trigger or events. So similar to how you build a condition in other events in RPA, you could still do the same here. And then we will see here the outputs. You'll see here the record updated. So basically we'll get a response of what is being updated. And then any activity that is being outputted, any like execution that is being outputted, it will be available as variables later in that. So I've already done this. Let's see how this works already. So I'm gonna do quickly a test. I'm gonna add a breakpoint. Let's see if I have any event. So I do have an event. So what I did before this demo, I made sure that I have an event that would cater for that condition. So we can see, okay, what is the response of that? So it's okay, PO number, status, vendor created by, updated by, an object, ID, invoice date, and so on. So we can see everything we have here, and this is basically what we can use. Some interesting things to notice here is that I can even update it while it's running. So I could go here and say, let's see, maybe I don't want to use vendor X, I want to use Acme Inc. The moment I do this is this will basically update the variable state, and the rest of the flow will basically continue with that value. So this would be nice if you have like very close data to what you would need, but it's not exactly what you need. You can like change it before getting to a step. So yeah, that comes in as useful. Good. So this is working. Now let's move to this one. So here we said that we want to use an automation. So on tasks, we'll see that we have multiple types of implementations. So we have create action app task, start and wait for RPA, start and wait for agent, external agent, API workflows, which is in preview. Then you can start another agentic process. You can start and wait for another agentic process, especially if it's like something very long running and you don't want to wait for it. That would be a use case. You can then execute execute business rules. Then we will have some patterns. We have some implementation around being able to create a queue item, or even creating and waiting for a queue item to be completed. So this would be basically the two ways we can kind of like work with RPA. And I'm gonna stop a little bit here on conceptual part with RPA because I think it's an important subject. I know like RE framework is very important and is like it's what made like upgraded the RPA from something that was okay working, but that didn't make it wasn't easy to make it reliable, made it into something that was very prescriptive, how you should build it. You have error management, you have lots of things built into the framework which help you basically implement much more reliable like implementations of robots. Basically, this is not necessarily like replacing RE framework altogether because this is not gonna handle RPA. It's still when the moment you need RPA, you're still gonna need to use a robot. And then when you're gonna use RPA workflow, like start and wait for an RPA workflow, this would imply that you create a job for that robot, for that process, and then you wait for it to finish. But maybe you already have an implementation or you want to use a queue. So in this case, it would be this process, the agentic process would be the dispatcher for that queue. So in the use case that you don't have basically you don't need a RPA dispatcher because you're going to orchestrate things with agentic process and Maestro, as then you would only need the performer part of that. So you would only create a queue and create a performer for that queue. So basically you can optimize, especially on UI automation use cases where, creating the session, setting up the environment is just too much of a cost and you want to be efficient about it. So it will depend always on, okay, what is, how efficient would this be for your use case. Clearly being very reliable and so on, it will be like this. Something to take into account is that the fact that we have retriability on any element here is that even if it's a RPA job which fails, we can still create a new RPA job. So we can create a new one each time in case you want to correct it. So I wanted to call this out because I think it probably would have been one of the lingering question on, okay, how does it fit with RE framework? But if you have other questions around RE framework, feel free to put them in the chat. Good. So as I was saying, for this use case, I'm just gonna do a simple create start and wait for an RPA workflow. Here, I'm gonna see all the RPA processes that were published in Orchestrator that I have access to as a user. So in this case, I'm gonna use invoice to PO matching. I'm gonna have two inputs here, and I'm gonna start using things from the event that invoice created is giving me. So I'm going to use the invoice number here. So this should be very similar to like existing Studio Web like patterns. And I'm going to also use the PO number. Probably that is okay. And then what we'll see is that, again, we get two outputs. We have a PO number in case it matches to one and the resolution required. So here on the condition, I want to like see, okay, how I can build this. So for yes and no, so we're gonna use the resolution required. I'm gonna use the expression editor. So here again, similar like patterns from Studio Web in general, but here we're gonna use. So we're looking for resolution required for invoice to PO matching. So on the left side, we have the variable names, and on the left side, we have the source. So this is invoice to PO matching is the name of the task, who's outputting that. And here, we basically want to compare this as if it's true or not. So we can do it like, is it true? No, was it yes? Sorry. Actually, it would be better to just test it out because I don't remember what it's outputting. I don't remember if it's outputting a yes or a no or a true or false. Okay, so I can see it's a yes, so I assume it's a yes no here. So I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna go and implement this. Let's use this time like this. I can even test it here. That's pretty clear. That would be the output. Okay, so if it's resolution required, yes. Is it on the right one? No, this is the no one, of course. No, on the. We also have another option here if in case like we have a default path, so meaning that if nothing is needed, you can make something as a default path, and the way that it will evaluate is it will start evaluating all the conditions, and if there's no matching condition, lastly it will use the default path, so it will not evaluate the default paths with the condition at the same time. So yeah, just to keep in mind that you can also have that option. Good. So I think we have some like routing logic. So here we're not gonna do anything, but we can already test it out if it goes this way. So let's do a step by step. Let's put here the breakpoint so we make sure that it stops here. And we can influence and say, let's see, what's gonna be outputted because we want to go on the no route. So we're gonna change the resolution required to a no. So see, we have here yes, but let's say no. So this would be very nice, especially when we're referencing RPAs that you don't want to like. Actually, not RPAs. If you want to use a process that is already well built and you don't want to influence it for orchestrating it, you don't want to change it just for debug time or test time. This is I found it very handy. So in this case, I just override the no, it goes on this direction. And as I said, this is not implemented, it will just be an op. So at least we got this part implemented. It's probably going to be much quicker on these because concepts are very close, are very similar, meaning that the way that you configure something for an RPA workflow, the same would be for an agent. So we're going to use, I believe it was the agent resolve discrepancies. Let's see. Yes, this was the one. So we're going to give it again the same, I'm going to give it the invoice number. Oh, sorry, that's the PO number. So we're gonna not use that one. We're gonna use the PO number from the invoice to PO matching, or yeah, and we're gonna use the invoice number from the invoice created. Good. Okay, so this again, it's same concept. A process of type agent is deployed in Orchestrator. I can use it here. I get the inputs and the outputs. So I'm going to have to get here a decision, a reason, and in case if there's an error, I'll also have that object. And the next thing that I should be configuring here is basically here. But let's first test it out. Yeah. If my colleagues want me to call out something that is being asked in the chat while I'm doing this, I could help with that also to use the time between while things are running.
I think we've answered all the questions.
Good. Meaning that if there's something that I could show visually, which would make much more sense. Okay, so as we can see, what happens is when we call an agent, we get some additional visibility. We can actually even see the trace of how the agent run. So basically, it's not just okay what we was sent to that. It was also I think I did something bad. Okay. It was not just the input, as I see what input I gave. You can see what was outputted, so resolved, and the invoice number matches the purchase. But we can also see, okay, what was the system prompt, how things were actually worked inside of it, and each thing. So this is kind of like a way to understand how an agent is running inside of it without actually having to step out. So this would be nice thing because you don't have to step out. Good. So we now know that basically the output for this is resolved. So I'm gonna make a bold claim that is probably gonna be decision is resolved on this side and rejected on that side. So let's build the expression. Gonna use the decision. So our decision is ejected. And on resolved, we're gonna do okay. Okay, so from here, basically, it's gonna go to rejected. Either if it's resolved, it's gonna go to approve invoice. Let's look a little bit on user tasks in general. So user tasks in the agentic process, the implementation for this is create an action app. So if I don't know how many of you are familiar with apps in general, but basically the implementation that we want to support is being able to create an action center task. But the way that the UI for that action center task would be an app. So for this, you would need an app with an action schema to be like created, and then you can leverage that when you're creating this task. So in this case, I have already created a resolve discrepancies, and I can build here the title. So yeah. Let's see. So we're gonna use for invoice number. And we're gonna pass some data to it. So we're gonna use the invoice amount. So we have total amount here and the PO number. Yeah, okay, good. So this is basically how you can configure it. In case you want to also configure, okay, what is the priority for this? If you don't select anything, it's gonna be medium, I believe. If you want to add labels, if you want to configure an assignee here, you will be able to select, like for example, I can select myself here, or you can just use a variable. So in this case, I could even use who created the invoice, or somebody else. If it's an approver, that should be there, or a group of people that should be assigned this. So yeah, this is basically a way to configure. By default, if you don't use this, it will just be created unassigned, and then somebody has to pick it up. So I guess for the purposes of this demo, I'm just gonna just select myself for this. Okay, and in case I have any action catalogs, I can also map it to any of those catalogs. Good, and we see that even this has like a human decision, and then the action, which would be the action schema from that, the output of that action schema from that app. Good.
Hi,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. What was that action app? Can you please? I never seen that action center app.
Yeah. I can show quickly. It's basically it's creating this. This is the app. So just as a quick idea is that you can create an app. So basically this is kind of like a much more powerful form builder. And the moment you want to make it on an action app, you need to add also the action to the app. So then it creates an action app. So this is basically how you create it. And then you get this additional like additional configuration where you can select what are the outcomes. So it could be
Yes.
approve, reject. What are the inputs that this is expecting? And then any outputs that this would give. So if you have any like forums inside of the app, you could map them to the output properties, and that's what basically completing that action task would receive in the agentic process. You would receive that data back. So you can, if there's a human decision, if there's like a clarification on, oh, this should be this PO number, you can use that. So this is basically how you can do that. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on that,
Thank you.
but hope it answers it. Good. Okay, so we got this done. What else? Let's do the notify vendor. So the notify vendor would be in this case is again, some of these things automatically map to a concept. So if I would like not have anything here, It's like just a simple task. No BPMN concept that it's a message event. Because see, if I go here and change the element, I can see receive task, send task, and so on. So this one was marked as a send task before, but the moment I go into the action and say, hey, I want to execute a connector activity, yeah, it automatically is created as a send task. So we automatically map to the BPMN concept. So most of the time, if you're just implementing, you might not even need to know the BPMN concept. While it helps to, have a structured way of understanding or having a common language between all participants, this would be a way. So here I'm just gonna use an Outlook connector. I'm not gonna do a lot, but just send an email. I'm gonna use the invoice. I think I had an email here. Yes. Okay. And then I can build a subject and so on. So I'm not gonna do a lot, but you can imagine what you can do here. So basically, this is like a very close implementation of what you have on any like integration service activities, where you have connection management, and then you can just do the configuration. So something to take into account for this like implementation, the execute connector activity. This means any published connector in your tenant would be available to be used here. So if you have custom connectors, if you have, I don't know, any type of connector, you can leverage them here. And you can use them as a one go. In case you need kind of like to link together multiple like API calls, you can still do them here, but I think API workflows would be a much better developer experience to do that. So good. I think we're almost there. Last one is I said we're going to talk a little bit about these like events. So these are intermediate events. So what it means that this will go and wait for this event. So in this case, as we can see, we have the implementations for like for these events are two: wait for connector activity and execute connector activity. So in this case, we want to wait for an event. So it would be, again, we can use Outlook. We're going to wait for a mail to be received. So email received, again, we can configure the mail. We can do filters on top of that if it's from somebody according. So we can even use like a conversation ID or some form of threading in how we send the email. Then we wait for the same thing back, so we don't have to we don't like trigger on wrong emails. And on this side, this is basically a timer event. So we can see all these like possible timer events. Possible events. All of these are BPMN concepts. Yeah, not all of them have an implementation. Like for example, escalation, signal, conditional link. These we don't have an implementation for them yet. But in this case, like the timer event has one, so we can use either a duration or a date. So if we know exactly on which date this should like wait for, so or a duration, we can configure. So when you configure a duration, we have this nice editor where it says, okay, I'm going to wait for, I don't know, 1 day. In this case, this is basically an ISO standard for duration notation. But I think it also mentions, yes, ISO 1601. But for the purposes of this demo, I'm not going to wait for more than 5 minutes. So we're gonna leave it even, I can do it even lower than that. Good. So I guess we have things here already implemented. So we could, I feel that we should just show a little bit on how this is being published, and then show a little bit on the operate side. Hopefully we have, I haven't managed to go through things on time, but okay. So when we publish, basically we get the options to either publish to to a personal workspace feed or to a tenant process feed. There is a very important difference between these, as in the personal workspace feed, this is mostly going to be very everything will be out of the box, meaning that a package will be created and then the process will automatically be created. Triggers will automatically be created. You don't have to do a lot of configuration. But on the tenant process feed, you just create a package and then you have to go in and manually deploy it. So this is because here you're just publishing things. Doesn't mean that you want to automatically update things. So you have that option to go one or the other. So I'm just gonna publish it to the personal workspace because it's much more convenient. And then we can go into Orchestrator and see how that looks. So I can go into Orchestrator. In my work, I can see I have this, the dev dice model, the one that we've been implementing, and we can see that we can start it. We can, let's go on the process and see, okay, how it's configured. We'll see a very similar view to what you have for any process. So in this case, it says, okay, I don't have access to the resolve discrepancies. I can overwrite it with something. In this case, you see, but again, what is important here is to make sure that you use the right connections. So configurable by users wouldn't be applicable to this use case because being an unattended, the configurable by user wouldn't get a chance to actually configure them. So let me see if I have the right process up is resolve. I see. I somehow don't have access to that, but that's fine. I can still update it. It will only not work for the resolve discrepancy step, which we can then fix. But I wanted to give a chance now for my colleague Robert to actually show some use cases in the operate space, basically in Maestro, and how you can then do some nice like for example this use case that I have here, where we have a couple of incidents, so things that when things go wrong in production, you get a chance to actually like repair them. So that's the fundamental difference. So like a faulty job, faulted RPA job is in a terminal state. You can't recover it. You can only start the job from scratch. That's why queues are very handy, is because queues are basically the transaction. The queue item is the transaction. In this case, the whole process is kind of like a very nice transaction that you can, like at any point in time, fix. So if we go to this one, for example, we're gonna see now very similar view, the same process we implemented. We're gonna see the details here. Yeah, we're gonna see the instances that have run. So this will map to a job in Orchestrator. But what we can do on top of this, we can actually look inside one of the ones that have an incident. So the ones that are in a faulted state have an incident. But remember, as I was mentioning, this is not something that is terminal. So I can see exactly where it failed. So I can, in this case, I can go in and say, okay, so it failed on invoice to PO matching. I can even select it and it will automatically select it here and also show me the incidents tab. So it even tells me what was the error from Orchestrator. So automation cannot be started. I didn't have robot units anymore. I went ahead and allocated some robot units. So now if I retry this, I get this possibility to retry the failed step. So it will only retry this. Anything that was done before, it will still be there. On top of that, I can even do the same things that I was doing in Studio Web, is I can go and modify things. I can modify these variables while they're in these states. And the nice thing about this, that even if I go and modify something like this, for example, let's say total amount, which it wouldn't be nice, total amount, to modify the invoice total amount to something larger, because that would imply that somebody would pay more for this than it was. When I do this, this is being tracked. So this is being audited because we're influencing the process from outside as it was meant to run. So in this case, I can add an optional comment. I'm not going to add for now. But what happens when you do this is that you will get it in action history. You will see exactly who did this. And then we also get the underlying data of what was changed. We just don't yet show it. So I did that. I'm going to retry it. Same, I get a comment. Who's doing the retry? Everything is being tracked. These will be kept for like historical reasons. The fact that something failed at some point and then it was retried, we will still have that data, and we can see now that it's running, and we can actually look at it at how it's running. So this is not Studio Web anymore. This is actually live. So as I was saying, this is a very important part of observability in production use cases. Okay, so that was one use case. Another one which I wanted to showcase is basically the same idea. Is something failed here, but it cannot be easily recovered. You cannot just retry it. You need to make a change and then migrate it to a new version. So in this case, I can migrate any instance which is in either a faulted or a paused state. I can go in and migrate it to a new version. It could be a higher version or a lower version, doesn't matter. The thing to take into account is that you need to have this element should be on the current version and also on the whatever version you're migrating to. So it knows to keep the execution on this step. So yeah, we can do that. It will all migrate the instance. So you don't have to you don't have to worry that something, if it runs for 6 months, you'll be stuck on one version. You can migrate them as you have new versions. Good. That I think is most of what I wanted to show. I'm gonna stop sharing and let Robert show the
Yeah,
monitor
sure.
part.
Yeah, sure thing. All right. So, moving deeper into the from one instance, like Andre was just showing you here, you can actually dive into monitoring, and it'll start to give you several metrics associated with, any particular version run. So in this case, let's say I've run this 21 times, this particular process. Immediately I can see the different success paths that were taken. So that 21 breaks down into 17 and, 4 failures, right? I can kind of trace visually the different paths. And if I hover over each one of these particular tasks, I'm able to see the minimum amount of time something took, the maximum amount of time, kind of the P95, P99 scores, and the average length of time as well. So that gives me, at a really high level, just visual view, a quick understanding of what's happened in this process. But I also have a heat map toggle, which makes it even more clear to me, right? So at the highest level, right, I'm able to see where I have perhaps the biggest bottlenecks or choke points or the things that took the most amount of time. If I want to dive deeper, right, to better understand some of the different incidents that may have occurred, right, for each one of the process versions, again, I would have, the incident counts per week, how many completed incidents I have per week. But then I get several top 10 lists. So top 10 faulted elements, top 10 active instances, top 10 elements, top 10 outliers, right? I can start to, get some rudimentary understanding of things that I might be able to improve in my process, just looking at all of these different tables that come out of the box here, if you will. And I can also set alerts and right for these pre-configured tables. So if you look at this one right here, I would be able to say, okay, if the duration of an instance took longer than X amount of time or X amount of hours, right, I can send an email to a specific person, right? And I can manage these alerts more broadly inside of Insight. So that gives you some sense of how everything is integrated into the broader UiPath platform, if you will. All right. The other thing I can do is I can actually filter down to specific instances. Again, so I can filter to ones that were running or faulted or by specific versions. I can search for specific variables. if I need to. I won't do that in that case. Let's see. Or here by elements. So I can select specific elements that I'm interested in, right? Because not all paths lead you to actually execute a specific element. So 2 different ways I can filter all of these tables. All right, now moving on. I also have an optimized view. And this is tied into our process mining capabilities, right? So it gives us, beyond just those tables, some sense of, my automation completion rate, but gives me more specific suggestions. Where I might have a bottleneck in the approve invoice step or the resolve discrepancy step. For any of these things here, I have, the ability to try it, take different actions, view broader details. And I won't go into this too much, but this will open up process mining connection, right, where I can start to dive deeper and take advantage of the full capabilities of process mining. So I will stop there. And let us know if you have any follow-on questions. I think a poll was just launched while I was talking.
I think I saw one question in the chat from Abhishek on I think it's a fair question, and what you showed just now, Robert, I think it's very contextual. So the question was the motive of Maestro is RP plus BPMN plus I, correct? Yeah, then because there are other BPM tools that try to integrate RPA and how is Maestro different than other BPM tools? So in some form, yes, that is conceptually correct. I think the key difference is that we don't only integrate with our own parts. So we don't only integrate with our own agents, we also support external agents. So if you build an agent with Crew AI or with LangChain, we will support being able to call those agents. So we don't want to box you in on when you're like orchestrating the process end to end. We want to let you use whatever you already have built or have a preference to build. We just want to make sure that you can orchestrate the end-to-end process. So this is where I see maybe it's maybe a difference because I've seen other like companies that do only like a very good integration with their own products but never go outside of it. We have a very unique like value prop with integration service because we have a lot of pre-built connectors, which in other vendors you have to like build the integration each time. And lastly is exactly what Robert showed is we have very good integration with our own set of products like Insights. You get out of the box data in Insights. You get some pre-built monitoring dashboards already there. And lastly, you also get that data in process mining. So in the end-to-end story, I think we're delivering much more value than other like tools, I would say, because again, in process mining, it's not just about the execution data from Maestro. It's also about other data sources that you can bring into process mining, so you can do like a more complex mining exercise, not just the execution data. So that is not easy to do in other tools. Actually, in other tools, I know it's not possible. So, wanted to call those out. I hope that answers your question, Abhishek. Yeah. And yeah, I guess we can share the results.
I can share the Excel because I don't think we can share the results on screen. Let me check a bit. Can you see the results? No, because it's not okay. Let me share a bit the results. Oh.
Yeah. Okay, well, I see that there's lots of no, but still exploring or planning. I hope this session kind of like got you at least acquainted with all the concepts so you can go ahead and explore. By the way, this is also available in community. So it's not just for enterprise licenses. So, but yeah, you should be able to use it everywhere. It will be officially GA'd, what I've demoed tomorrow. But you can, at this moment, being in public preview, you can already do it today. So yeah, if there's no other questions left to answer, guess we can call it today.
I would just like for us to close on the next deep dive. So
Yes.
if you give me a moment. A bit. So I already shared in chat, I think, the links for the next session of deep dives. Please join us for the next sessions. Of course, in May, we have had a record of attendees this year, but that is, of course, also due to the agentic sessions, but more are coming up. So really can't wait for you to join us also in May. We have the links here for America and for EMEA APJ. You also have them in chat. And don't forget the recording and the event PPT will be with you tomorrow on email and on the event link. So thank you all for joining today, and thank you, Andrei, and to all of my colleagues who supported you within the chat and made sure we have an amazing session. The engagement was huge in the chat. I can also see a lot of UiPath MVPs in the attendees, so very glad for this, and see you in May. Thank you.
Yep. Thank
Bye.
you.